Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I think. Because I see people from all over the planet. Welcome to this session Water and Agri-Food, about global challenges and local solutions. I'm the moderator today. My name is Jacqueline Barendse. I have some history in water sanitation, and I now work on the development of the Mekong Delta business platform. Happy to have you here. We really have an interesting lineup of people. We have Jelle Beekma from the Asian Development Bank, providing us some context. We have Bas Bruning from Salt Doctors, because we really want to look into solutions and what's really happening. Then we have Luong Vinh, and he's from Eurofins. He will talk about fruit. And really, it's very nice to have Herman Mondeel from Witteveen+Bos here. And we have Rasoul Mikkelsen from Royal Eijkelkamp. So we really have some people also live. And we have you. And I can only see a few people, so you're a bit in the dark for me. But please participate. Yeah, share your questions, your comments, or maybe you want to make linkages, share them in the chat. And wherever possible, we will also incorporate your questions in the discussions we have. So please do join. Okay, well, let's, here we have the nice overview of our session, but let's move to Jelle right now. Jelle, you can take the screen.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Jelle Beekma, I'm a Senior Water Resources Specialist. I'll go through a few agri-food and water issues, specifically in Asia. Very quickly, here you see the 7 operational priorities of the Asian Development Bank, and 3 are immediately related to water. All are somehow related to water and food security. We have on the right top side climate change and disaster resilience, environmental sustainability. We have below that rural development and food security, of course, very important to today as well. And then making cities more livable is much more related to water supply. We apply much more a holistic and integrated approach by these 7 priorities. And that's a big change from the sectoral approaches we had before. Next slide, please. In Asia, you have a lot of water stress. You see that on this map. In the red areas, you see water stress, and particularly in the right-hand side, the eastern part of your picture, you see that there's a lot of red and yellow, orange. So you have 5 countries with a real high water stress: Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, and extremely high, as no surprise, India, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, and then still a lot of countries with medium-high water stress. Next one, please. What are the main water challenges in Asia at the moment? We have a quick urbanization. There's more need for food. Obviously, there are increasing demands. Access to sanitation and water is, of course, always a big challenge. We have a deteriorating water quality, and that's a major problem. Food security, particularly, also became much more apparent during the COVID crisis. And, well, what everybody talks about, increasing extreme weather events, climate change, because of climate change. And, of course, this is all sort of encompassed by governance and capacity to really integrate. Next one. In rural development and food security, the other part of the water and agri-food, we are focusing more and more on the rural development with modern agricultural value chains and on food security. And I'll show you a little bit how that has changed over time. Next one, please. So I mentioned COVID already, that has sort of helped us to rethink many issues. And on the top, you see some of the short-term actions. On the bottom, some of the medium-term actions, what has changed. Of course, the government had to play a very active role to manage this crisis, but that also had impact on the transport between many areas. So there's a very clear idea to bring the markets closer to the consumers as well as the food production. And of course, you have to expand the social protection system. That comes as no surprise. That is a much bigger challenge in many of the Asian countries, obviously. Then medium and long-term actions below, I focus on the food security, of course, and agri-food, ensure food stocks, and a change to investment in wholesale markets and a much better cold chain and this whole supply chain and value chain in general. And of course, again, increasing of resilience and self-sufficiency. Next one, please. For water investments, we have a comparable but slightly different focus. Of course, there's more focus on WASH, particularly on sanitation and health. We also look very much at acceleration of digital utilities, but also digital management of irrigation systems. Capacity building to have a better financial sustainability, to use the supply systems better as well, and increased and safe, resilient water provision. That also applies, for example, to sprinkle irrigation in the fields. Further diversification of supply chain, I already mentioned that, and green and positive nature positive recovery. Natural capital is playing a much bigger role in our operations in the future as well. Next slide. Water, food, energy nexus is a part of our strategy 2030, and that shows the integrated approach as well. It's a very nice sort of tool theoretically, but again, like with integrated water resources management, how do you really bring it into practice? One of the challenges we feel is how do we quantify if something is positive in this nexus? How do you have a sort of objective framework for that? We have already quite some really interesting results in some of our projects. For example, in one of our projects, we were looking at the energy conservation by pumping more efficiently. But lo and behold, what we found out is that most gains were actually in reducing fertilizer application, because a lot of energy goes in producing fertilizer. We're developing many new initiatives, and it will be interesting to discuss with you further on that. And we're looking more and more also on how we can use this more positive nexus to have reducing water footprint of food, because food production, of course, uses much of the water that we use in the whole society worldwide. Next one, please. Here, what I told you, a quick overview how our focus is changing. You see a lot. This shows what the ANR are, that is agriculture and natural resources, has been spending by subsector from 2009 to 2020. And you see on the top, irrigation, 33%, and most of the investments were there. And then the next one is water resources, water-based natural resources management, and the third one only rural market infrastructure. And next one, please. I'm not going through all the details. Here we see for the last 3 years, you see that irrigation is still on top, but with 27%. But then the second one is rural market infrastructure, and the third one is agriculture production, with 15% and 9%. And that shows that there's much more on this value chain, what I mentioned before already. Next one, please. Here I show something that is typical for our water sector pipeline, and then we mainly look at the top ones because they're related more to water and agri-food. Irrigation modernization is very prominently there. Flood management and protection also of sometimes food production systems. Rural vitalization, that's a very interesting one. We do that specifically a lot in China, but it's something that we're doing more in other countries where there's a good development in the urban areas, but less in the rural areas. and looking how to integrate the two, and also how to make a much more integrated approach on water, food in these rural areas. Below that, we have the integrated river management, river basin management, water quality, of course, integrates water resources management largely. We get more and more on horticulture. We have 2 projects now, but we get more of them, particularly also on perennial horticulture. And then, of course, more into the direction of climate change, weather forecasting, and water resources management. But the biggest part of our portfolio, you can see, is drinking water and sanitation. We have 60 projects in there. The brackets show how many projects. Next one, please. Some interesting things, I think, in the agricultural, the food production sector. We'll be looking more at high productivity agriculture, circular bioeconomy, and increased resilience and digitalization. So you have to think of indoor agriculture, greenhouses. Netherlands is very good in that, of course. Rural urban circular economy, where we use, for example, the products of the cattle breeding for inputs in agriculture and crop production as well. And like I mentioned before, increasing resilience and digitalization. Next one, please. I always hear this story, we're running out of water, and that's one of the things, but of course we can also probably do much more with this sort of indoor and urban agriculture. A lot of water that we're using is lost to the atmosphere. Of course, it comes back eventually. But there's probably a big possibility to do much more on indoor agriculture and circular water use close to the cities. And I think that's a sort of thing that we want to look at much more, particularly in Asia, where you have these mega cities and an enormous market, and you could reduce water use significantly, leaving it to almost what is only in the produce, and thereby saving enormous amounts of water for other users. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. I think I remained within the time. Thank you very much for your attention, and here's my address. We can always discuss further online. Thank you.
Jelle, thank you very much for providing this context. The global challenges, and we zoom in on Asia today, but they're definitely global. And I was looking to my right, I saw Rasoul, you're writing a lot of stuff. So I think you have a question to Jelle already. So maybe just ask it.
Yeah, sorry if I am kickstarting the question session already. Jelle, thank you very much for a very exciting presentation about your engagement and vision, and also a policy framework for the food and water nexus, and also energy. I was wondering, you're working very closely with this government in the region, how your policy and the portfolio aligned with the recipient government itself, and do you have any impact on pushing this agenda through these governments?
So thank you very much for your question. Yeah, we always work directly with governments. We have member countries. We have a number of contributing member countries and a number of developing member countries, as we call them. We always align the projects directly with their plans. We do also work very intensively on policies and on strategies to improve various issues in water management. For example, what I mentioned before, reducing water use, increasing water productivity, and also going to much more circular type of economies. We do that through knowledge products. We do that through support from specialists, and we bring it up in discussions to the agenda as well. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. Maybe, I don't know, short question, maybe short answer, but I used to work with the AIWW myself in the past, and I don't know exactly how it works, but water is in one building and Agri is in another building, etc. So, and I heard about all these projects, etc., but I was also wondering about the AIWW itself. So how will the AIWW organize more the combination and the coordination between the water and the Agri people which are totally different departments in the past.
Thank you for your question. Well, there were very much sectors, and you of course always still have them because certain governments function through their sectoral departments. But like I mentioned before, we have a strategy 2030 in which we look at 7 operational priorities, which are across many of the different sectors quite often. Water was always together with urban development, water and urban development, and then you had another sort of water part in the agriculture and natural resources. What we nowadays have as well is a sustainable development and climate change department in which we try to bring all these together. And we have what we call a 1 ADB approach in which we make sure that we have people from all the different departments that are relevant for a project. Of course, that doesn't mean that every single department or every single sector is included, but we go at least across all the different topics, and we try to develop a more and more holistic way of dealing with projects. Also developing now in country partnership strategies, more something like a programmatic approach rather than project-wise.
Thank you very much, Jelle. I see already a question coming in from Danny, but let's keep it for now. Jelle, you will hang on, I guess. So I hope we can come back with another question.
I'll be
for
online.
you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's look at the agenda now, and we move to Bangladesh, to Bas Bruning and salt doctors. I mean, doctors are all around us the last couple of years, but now you are doctoring with salt. Please, Bas, take the screen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for this introduction. Indeed, my name is Bas Bruning from the Salt Doctors, and the Salt Doctors, as was already kind of suggested, we try to help people that are suffering from salinity problems. So all over the world, salinity is a problem, as we've seen in the previous presentation, and there we try to help farmers to improve their yields through salt-adapted agricultural practices. So interventions in irrigation and land preparation, choice of cultivar of different various crops. So that's what we do. And that's what I talk a little bit about now here. A project called the Salt Solution in Bangladesh. Bangladesh was not on the slide that we saw before, but I would guess it's also in the category of severely water stressed. There's about 1 million hectares of salt affected. At least that was the case in 2010. And if you know that in 2000 or in 1973, it is already now higher with 27% than it was then. Sorry for the formulation, but it was in 2010. It was an increase. It had increased by 27%. So probably now it has increased even further. So a lot of salt-affected soils in Bangladesh, which leads to migration. It is predicted that by 2050, maybe 27 million people will have to leave their place because they cannot produce enough food anymore, and there's nothing, it's too much affected by salinity. However, the positive sides is that the majority of soils are moderately saline. That means a salinity level of between 4 and 12 decisiemens per meter, for those who know that unit. But that kind of suggests that there are still things possible with that range of salinity level. So salinity in Bangladesh is strongly seasonal. There's kind of 3 seasons in Bangladesh. There's a very strong wet monsoon season. Then there are no salinity problems and everybody cultivates rice. But then there are 2 dry seasons, so a more warm one and a more colder one. And that is when people stop cultivating crops. Seawater intrudes into the country and everything becomes salt affected. So that's the last point, strong water intrusion, shallow saline groundwater, and there's no water for irrigation. Next slide, please. However, all these things that I just mentioned also provide some opportunities. At least that's what we thought. It may be possible to produce salt-tolerant crops on these salt-affected soils, especially given the range of salinity that I mentioned before. And that would lead to improved nutritious food consumption, also improved participation of women. And we could all do that by creating a network of farmers. So next slide, please. So that's kind of the description of the project. It ran for 4 years, 2017 to 2020. And one of the main activities was to set up a test facility. And there we could test crop varieties, both varieties that we knew from Dutch experience that they were more tolerant to salinity, but also local crop varieties. We had a train-the-trainer concept, so there were 200 lead farmers that we trained on our test facility, and those in turn also trained farmers, so that led to a total number of 5,000 farmers that were reached in this project. So we provided them with knowledge, skills, but also seeds. And the project was funded by the Dutch Postcode Loterij, and the lead organization was ICO, an NGO. But we worked together with Acacia Water, Kodak, and Laltir Seeds. Laltir Seeds is from Bangladesh, and they were also testing their own seeds on this test facility. And the test facility, I'm happy to know, is still running today. So even after the project finished, it's still going on. Next slide, please. So these are already the results. I thought I don't go into too much details what we did. A little bit we can see on the photo, someone standing near raised beds. I also mentioned that we worked together with Acacia Water. So part of our interventions was also improved irrigation. Again, something that we saw in a previous presentation that is very important. A lot of improvement is still to be met there. And on the top photo, we can see many different types of crops, mostly vegetable crops, carrots, many types of cabbage, but also local crops that we don't grow here in the Netherlands, such as bittergourd, for example, which is a very popular crop in Bangladesh. We tested those as well. So through a whole number of interventions, what I mentioned at the start, salt-adapted agriculture, we helped improving the yields there. And that was pretty successful. As we can see on the right side, the project was evaluated by an independent NGO about halfway through. And these are some of their findings. So food security increased from 15% to 65%. The use of salt-affected fallow lands increased from nothing to 76. So that's what I suggested before. That it was the land is used during the wet season for rice cultivation, but after that it's abandoned, and they wait the whole year until the wet season starts again. That we changed that practice. They started using those lands also in the dry, salty season. The household incomes increased by 34%. And also, there was more employment. It increased by 10% for the lead farmers, but 41% for group farmers. And because they now had all these vegetables at their disposal, they didn't sell everything at the market, far from it. Most of it, the majority is for their own consumption. So they also improved their diets. Vegetable consumption improved. It increased from 26 to 74%. So for the whole household, the dietary diversity improved. Finally, one of the goals, as I mentioned earlier, was to improve the participation of women. Since they are very involved in agriculture, this was particularly suitable to address that issue. And that also substantially improved. Women with improved skills for sustainable food production increased from 9 to 79%. And also the access of land improved. Now, I think most of us listeners know these symbols. I mentioned all the improvements, let's say, that were accomplished by the project according to the Sustainable Development Goals. So it proves to be an efficient way to address these problems. Next slide, please. We also used the project to identify some limiting factors. I won't go into much detail here. The whole story, by the way, that I'm telling is also recently been published. The reference is there on the screen. The Vos et al. 2021. It's in a book which was the result of a conference in Leeuwarden 2 years ago, I think by now. And the proceedings have been published recently. And this story that I'm telling now is also in that book. So for those interested to read more background, there is the reference. But some of the limiting problems, let's say, factors that were also identified. The first two, scarcity of quality of irrigation water and unstable rainfall. So both of them, the solutions point to rainwater harvesting. And that's something we did during this project with the help of Acacia Water. And that turns out that is a very big winning aspect, let's say. So a lot of can be improved with better maintenance, better design and planning of water use. So capture it when it's there and try to extend the use of it as much as you can over the whole year. So those are there's still a room for improvement there. Next slide, please. So what can we conclude? Saline agriculture, salt-adapted agriculture can greatly improve livelihood of farmers in coastal Bangladesh. And as I mentioned, there is a very clear relation to the SDGs. So new land can be used for crop cultivation, which addresses SDG 2, zero hunger. That in turn improves the vegetable consumption. That relates to SDG 3, good health and well-being. Diversifies the diet, increases food security and income for the household. That's again, that's SDG 1, no poverty and also zero hunger. And good health and well-being, so SDG 1, 2, 3. And women were clearly involved in this case, and their skills and participation increased greatly, which relates to the SDG 5, gender equality. And then, of course, the project as a whole is a clear example of climate action, SDG 13, and also of setting up public-private partnerships, SDG 17, to reach those goals. And that's why I was happy to mention that the test facility we created there together with all the partners in the project is currently still running. And we currently have another project in Bangladesh where we are also linking again to the test facility that we created there. So I'm very happy to be able to share that. It's personally when you start a project and then the project ends and you leave again, I always find that a bit sad. So it's very nice if the project turns out to be, I don't know, that effective, that it creates its own continuation. So this was an example of that, and I'm very happy to have been involved in that project. Next slide, please.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
Questions?
That was my story.
Oh,
So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
super. Thank you, Bas. And yes, doctors want to cure things on more places. We have a couple of questions. I'll ask you, Bas, for short answers if that's possible for you. But
I will be very short.
I have one question from Danny, and there is a question from Aulia. But Herman, he will take that one. But let's do Danny. And it says, dear Bas, can you explain why Bangladesh has high salinity water? Why is the problem even there?
Yeah, I think I can. I have to be short. Bangladesh is a kind of a delta country, similar to the Netherlands. It's a low-lying coastal country. And during the monsoon, there's a lot of rainfall, which flows to the sea, and then there's no issues. But when that rainfall stops, the sea intrudes through the rivers. So the rivers turn from fresh to salt. Which in turn increases the salinity of the groundwater, and the groundwater rises to the surface and thereby salinizes the soil.
Okay, thank you very much. it's there to stay. Huh? And then, Aulia, you have a question?
During the monsoon it leaves again. That is very nice to work with.
Yeah, monsoon, but every year it's back intruding again. Huh? So every year you have the same circumstances. Yeah.
Yes.
There is another question for you, and I understood from Herman, who is sitting next to me, that he had also a similar question. So,
hopefully
Herman,
I can incorporate. Bas, thank you very much for the presentation, and impressive results of the project, which also brings me to the first question. I think you have nice results. But what is needed for scaling up?
Good question. I'm not sure if I can be very short in that. I think we have shown that the principle works, and I think that is very important. So I hope governments, local governments, should jump in and see that this is an effective way of addressing all these SDGs. And my hope would be that local government jumps in for upscaling, for further upscaling. But as I mentioned, the project.
No, I'm sorry, Bas, but I think for now we just keep it to that because and then because I know so Herman has another question, and I, if possible, try to give a short answer, but it's okay. Herman.
Yeah, my second question is, you mentioned that at the moment the salinity is moderate, but Bangladesh is very vulnerable for climate change, sea level rise, changing river patterns or the flow. So is your setup, is it climate adaptive enough to cope with the changes Bangladesh is facing?
I think so. It is already getting worse, deteriorating. It's more salt affected and higher salinity levels. But because of this monsoon, which is also becoming more erratic and affected by climate change, so I mean, if they stop having a monsoon, then it's going to be difficult. But I doubt if that will happen. So I also mentioned that water harvesting and better water management strategies should definitely be part of it. And if you have more availability, access to fresh water during the whole season through smarter water capture and smarter irrigation techniques, you will be able to fight off salinity for longer. But maybe also the cheeky answer: more research is needed to prove that.
Yeah, but we also want. Okay, thank you very much, Bas. We'll make it back to you. We now move to examples in Vietnam, and we have Luong, Phuoc, Vinh, and excuse me already for pronunciation, but please, Vinh, introduce yourselves and take the screen.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Jacqueline. Yes, I'm Luong Phuoc Vinh. The right pronunciation is Luong Phuoc Vinh, and I'm currently the business development manager of Eurofins. And today I'm very liked to be able to share the project with you. This is the quality improvement tropical fruit in Vietnam. The project started in August 2021, and this is the Dutch government-sponsored project. And the Dutch government gave a grant, 50% of the total project budget, and other parties contribute the rest, including Eurofins, Yara, Bayer, and other institutions in Vietnam. And next slide, please. Yes, and this is why do we have these projects? Because you know the Vietnamese government has signed many free trade or agreements, and there is the trend to expand to the high value or fruits. And as you may know, that in Vietnam, until now, we depend a lot in Chinese market, and this is a volatile market. And sometimes they close the border, and our fruits cannot export. And sometimes in Ho Chi Minh City, we have some campaigns, support by the government, ask us to help the farmers. It's mean every family in Ho Chi Minh City to buy a lot of fruits to help the farmer. So we can see that the dependencies on China markets is very risky, and also it leads to the low price. They don't require a lot of quality, or they don't have a high quality requirement. So they they just need the low prices, and that's why we have the low income for the farmers. And there's a lot of quality issue or from the pesticide residues, or is this the MRL and the shelf life, and the farmers, they don't have the information, like they use a lot or overuse of input like fertilizer, water, or crop protection agents. And according to my the Witteveen+Bos project coordinator, and also I visit some central highland of Vietnam, that the farmers do the fertilization based on the gut feeling. Sometimes they apply more than 100% what is the crop needed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yep. So in the projects that are we will focus on the 3 provinces: Bình Thuận province and Long An province for the dragon fruit, and Barendse for pomelo, and Đồng Tháp for mango. So next slide, please. So there is other higher objectives of this project, or we plan to create the impact of the fruit sector in the 4 Vietnamese provinces, and then we can apply to many more other provinces. And thanks to this project, we can stimulate the sustainable economic growth and employment in the Mekong Delta region. And it's also aimed to connect with the strategic Netherlands, Dutch, and Vietnamese cooperation to transform the agriculture sector in the south of Vietnam. And this is also aimed to support the Dutch business in their internationalization strategies, and help our Dutch business easy to access the Vietnamese market. Next slide, please. And we will approach our system, this project is based on a system approach. As I said, we will Vietnamese farmers now, they don't have enough information for in many surveys, or the farmer apply or more than 30%. And in Central Highland of Vietnam, they said that more than 100% of the fertilization needed for the crop. And even farmers or cooperative have no report or tools to know how much water they need to irrigate their crop. And there is also the problem with the crop protection and hygiene at the farms. And we also found that farmers really need the post-harvest activity for cleaning, sorting, and packaging to logistics. Next slide, please. Yep. So in the projects, this project we will lead by MCNV, and there's a lot of partners, including Eurofins, Yara, Bayer, Vietnam Farmer Unions, to help us to choose the key farmers and then organize to broaden the projects to help many more farmers. And we also have many supporters from our Netherlands, and also from institutions, university from Vietnam, like Nông Lâm or Vietnamese Agricultural University, and Southern Fruit Research Center of Cooperative Development, and various Dutch fresh fruit importers. Next slide, please. So this is some picture that Mr. Witteveen+, the technical coordinator of this project, taken during his surveys in Vietnam in 2016. This is the farmers in Bình Thuận province. Next slide, please. And this is the picture he took in the Đồng Tháp province. The place is famous for mangoes. Next slide, please. And in different this projects, we will plan to transfer the knowledge. We will collect the data from soils, water, and crop from the project provinces, and then we will organize seminar, training, workshops to individual farmers, to key farmer first, and then we will extend to other parties, other cooperatives. Next slide, please. And then after do the training, we will through the key farmers, we will have enough data collections, and then improve the practice in post-harvest practice. Or we also choose the key farmers and also are active or or exporters to join to visit the fruit logistics in Berlin, so that many importers and the improved practice of Vietnamese farmer, will be realized in international market. Next slide, please. And for the demonstration that we will, as I mentioned, we will first showcase farmers and hold the trials, and they will receive the technical transfer, knowledge transfer from our experts. They will get familiar with the soil testing that is not very familiar with the farmers, and they will have the data based on our soil testing analytical report, and we will provide them more informed fertilization and irrigations. And then we will do the disseminations to at least 600 farmers. And we also organize fruit tech innovation days and to meet the farmers and exporter to support them. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes, and in the study, we will focus on the European market, and because there is this is the hot topic in Vietnam now, that and a lot of Vietnamese government are meeting or trying their best to help the farmers, and they already help farmers to access the European market instead of solely rely on Chinese market. And we will also transfer the knowledge and help the farmers to familiar with food safety and social compliance topics. Next slide, please. And this is the actual situation in Vietnam is that, as you may know, the Vietnamese agriculture sector is characterized by smallholder structure. It means that we have millions of farmers, 10 million farmers in Vietnam, and 2 or 3 million farmers in Mekong Delta. But one farmer only have 1 hectare or less than 1 hectare. So it is very difficult for big buyers, European buyers, to work with us, because small scale farming cannot be efficient at all. So, and I also had a meeting with various exporters. Most of them are SMEs, and they don't have farms, and they also don't have cooperatives. Actually, when they receive the BO from the importer, they will place the order for the farmers and cooperatives. And the thing is, even the exporter, sometimes they don't know what exactly the technical requirements of the products, or the which substances need to be controlled to be able to export to the Europe. And for the cooperatives, for the farmers, we have the list of allowed best crop protection chemical in Vietnam, but for one disease of the crop, there may be 10 or 20 brands of crop protection chemical, but the compound or the substance inside the products, the crop protection product, the farmer don't know. So that's why we are discussing and thinking to create, and already created the software that to help the export to easy to check the MRL, and it will be connected with the plant protection department database, allow crop protection chemicals, and the farmers, when they want to export a certain fruits to Europe, the system will help them to check which crop protection products should be used to be able to export to Europe. This is we call the MCS system. Next slide, please. Yep. So as you see in the slide, or the objective of the project is to improve the quality itself, improving the MRL and stuff life, to help to show the overuse of inputs from fertilizer and water. For the first issue, the quality issue, we will during the project we already have the knowledge transfer, and we will create an easy to access information system, because most of the Vietnamese find it difficult to deal with the English So it's very difficult to ask them to access the European database. And so we create the Vietnamese version system and connect with the local database from crop protection chemicals of the PPD. And we also connect with the various agriculture export during the project so that we support the farmers. And for the issue of overuse of inputs and fertilization, we will introduce the weak and cheap soil testing method years, and will help the farmer reduce the fertilizer needed or during the project. And we also provide information for the water retention curve to optimize the irrigations. And it's important to create a model to connect the various cooperatives in the project. Next slide, please.
Is this your last slide, or is it, because we have to keep time a little bit? So please, could you kind of
this is the last slide. Yeah, this is the last slide. I have already finished it. Actually, it's related to the how we can have the best price. And so in the projects that we will include some growers, some big or Vietnamese agriculture corporations. They will have the capability to manage many cooperatives, capability to provide technical support, and to find the output. Especially the most important thing is to find the output for the farmers, and then they can group many cooperatives, a few thousand hectares, and we must find a stable or sustainable buyers from Europe, and then we can apply the knowledge, the information during these projects can reduce the cost and help many farmers. And we also create we call it hospital food for free in the Mekong Delta to support the farmer. That's it. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Super. Thanks a lot for your presentation. And I think the last slide, or the one before this one, was very provided a good overview. And immediately I have a question on that, because you also somewhere mentioned that you need large companies, but I'm kind of struggling with, what do you mean with large companies in Vietnam, in Europe, and what could their role be? Because maybe in our audience, there may be such companies. So this is your chance to talk to them and get in touch with them. So anyway, leave your contact details in the chat, but at the same time, please explain what type of partners you're looking for.
Actually in Vietnam, that there is some big agricultural corporations, and I also meet them, and they also agree that they don't want to do the export. Their main task is to focus on growing the fruit to meet the European standards. And they have more than 1,000 agricultural engineers, and they will have the procedure, because they already have the high training staff, not farmers, so that their staff engineers can receive the training from European organizations, and then they will retraining to the farmers. And as you may see that for fertilization optimizations, for training the farmer with 1 hectare growing land, it may not be a large benefit, but if we can combine 1,000 farmer or 2,000 farmers, we can at the same time meet the big order of the European buyers, and at the same time we can have the economy of scale. 1 hectare, if we can reduce to only $1 reduce for the fertilizer and $1 for irrigation, and we can apply for 1 million farmers. That's a lot of money we can sell, and those big corporations will share the profit thanks to the technology, thanks to the expert, the knowledge transfer during the project. They will contribute back 70% or 80% to the farmers, to farmer unions, and they will keep 20% of the difference before applying the technology and after technologies. And that is the main idea. Yeah.
Vinh, thanks a lot. I think this is very clear, and you have a clear invitation for organizations, companies to help and actually improve efficiency of the process, but also improve or bring actually the products to an export level. So yeah, and you also explained that there might be a business model in there. So please, everybody who wants to get in touch, Vinh, please leave your contact details also in the chat so everybody can contact you. Or it's already here, I see on the slide.
Yeah, our slides. Yep.
Thanks a lot, and hang on because we may come back to you. But also, I have at the table Rasoul Mikkelsen to my right, or for, I don't know, I think when you're watching it's the other way around, but for me it's easier on the left, Herman Mondeel from Witteveen+Bos. They've been listening, well, they are also experts in the field. So let me start with you, Rasoul. First, it would be nice if you can introduce yourself, but you're from Royal Eijkelkamp. And actually, I was reading about the history of Royal Eijkelkamp. And the interesting thing is Royal in the Netherlands, it's a badge of honor. It means you're a company, a decent company, which is over 100 years old. And now I know that Eijkelkamp or Royal Eijkelkamp is working on water and soil. So then I think, they bring together water and soil or water and agri already for 100 years. Yesterday, I heard that this is the first time in the Amsterdam Water Week that the theme of agro and water is coming together. You'd already do it for 100 years. So, Rasoul, introduce yourself and why are we debating it here for the first time? You do it already 100 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, we are the company of 110 years old, and it's really, history is very interesting because also very interesting for this subject, because we are talking about global challenges and local solutions. And company was really founded by Blacksmith back in 110 years back because there was the local challenges and he found the local solutions. And we managed to scale it up. But actually back in 110 or 100 years almost, we find out water and soil related closely to each other. You know, you cannot have a healthy soil without water, and water resources is scarce. And if you go back again 100 years back, still there will be the same discussion. And I think for this discussion and for the topic that we have today, I think despite the efforts, despite the discussion, we are very fragmented in the sector. We are in siloed. I mean, we can discuss, we have all our silos, private sector, their owns, the government, the NGOs, the donors, the organization engaged in the giving money and the grants. So I think for this one, why we are not we've been discussing, but why we're just discussing this year, I think is discussion has been there, maybe not formally, but informal, but now it's come more and more important because I just like you yesterday preparing for this meeting, we have 2.5% fresh water in the world. And from that, we have only access to 1% for drinking, for irrigation, for industry, for everything. And then as Bas mentioned, 2050, we will be 10 billion people. Feeding 10 billion people by 1% water, it is almost mission impossible. So we have to really think out of the box. And I think we have to work together. I think we can emphasize on it for centuries and months and years, but I think if we continue as business as usual, what we are doing now, all of us will fail. And then we can stand here on the 10 years time and discuss. So I think collaboration, and finally, just very, very brief, I think Bas mentioned, and I think also Jelle mentioned, we have to focus on SDGs. I mean, SDGs is a common universal language for everyone. Almost 100, I think 90 countries are signed under that. Zero hunger, access to water for all, access to food, access to health. I think we should maybe integrate SDGs more in our business, more on the way we're working. And I think then we maybe have a a roadmap to going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, and I see that badge on your jacket. So
I'm advocating for it.
But before we go to Herman, maybe one short question. Basically, what Royal Eijkelkamp does local solutions, right? That's how it started. But yes, what you're saying basically is we have to go to global solutions. And the SDGs is a bit of a theoretical framework. Yeah. So that's okay. But now, how do we mix these things? How do we bring it into practice?
I think we have to go, not we have to go, but I mean, part of the solution is global solutions. But we have to be more inclusive. We have to take the local context in the consideration. When, as private sector, developing any solution has to fit with the local context. So we cannot develop anything in Netherlands or Denmark or Germany or other places and think it will work in Kenya and Bangladesh. It is really not going to work. This is the experience we learned. So we have to be inclusive more, and we have to also look at the whole value chain, not focus only, now we are talking about the water and food and energy, but look at the whole soil value chain. Soil is not soil, or water is not water. So I think we have to be more inclusive in our technology and solutions.
Thank you. I mean, Herman, you're on my left, and you're from Witteveen+Bos. Hey, Witteveen+Bos is an engineering company producing a lot of paper, I think. And we heard here about local global solutions. But you made all these reports and did all these studies for many years as well, although you're not royal yet, I think.
Not yet. 75 years.
75 years, you're on your
You're
way,
getting
25
closer.
years more. So that's 75 years of advice and studies, etc. So how do you look at this, at the global solutions, and what happened to all your reports? And introduce yourself first, Herman, before you answer my question.
Thanks for the introduction. Herman Mondeel. I'm a hydrologist, water management expert at Witteveen+Bos, engineering firm or consultancy firm, as you mentioned. Indeed, we do a lot of paperwork, but that can result in nice infrastructure, like roads or bridges or ports that can be part of the value chain, but also advise how to have more crop per drop of water, related to what Rasoul mentioned, that the availability of water is scarce. And that is our value in advising and designing infrastructure. We are a Dutch company, but we are also based in worldwide. And it's nice to use our knowledge from the Netherlands, but also internationally, to apply global solutions or global technologies, but it needs adaptation to fit into the local context. I think that's the main challenge, and that's usually quite complex. As Rasoul mentioned, it's part of the value chain. You have to deal with government, a lot of stakeholders, private sector. So it needs an integrated approach with all stakeholders, social inclusivity. That makes it interesting, challenging, and complex. But as Rasoul mentioned, it needs to be done to feed everyone in 2050.
I hear, we heard about the global problems, global challenges. The problems, we don't have problems, we just have challenges. So global challenges, I think we all see that. And then we said local solutions. I hear about technologies, I hear about scaling. So it sounds like we have global challenges, we have technologies which can be applied everywhere, but we need the local solutions. And now we need to scale. Why is it not scaling? I mean, it's interesting. We heard Bas, we heard Lufu thing. Sorry, and it stays local. Why is it not? What's the challenge when we want to go to scaling? Herman.
It needs what Bas mentioned. It needs government involvement to jump in. Sometimes you need to adjust policies or laws to enable a new system. But also financing mechanisms is needed that farmers can finance the required investments. You also have to deal, sometimes the investments results in a higher price of the crop that you see in Africa. We are not talking about Africa, but they face the issue that importing is cheaper than producing themselves. So if they want to produce locally, food will be more expensive for people and they can't afford. So also that you have to take into account, and makes scaling up difficult.
Because I was looking also at the questions, and I see something which links to that, a question, and this is about habit change. Oh, this is actually to fertilizer and water for Vinh, to Vinh, but we need also a lot of local adaptations. Yeah. Vinh, maybe we come back to you also, because I was triggered actually by the word habit change. Yeah, in the question. Is there a habit change? And this is about farmers. Do you see any habit change of the farmers relating to using many fertilizers and water? But also it relates to people who have to accept higher prices. So maybe I make it a bit of a broader question. The question came from Danny. Vinh, can you respond to that, please?
Sometimes I think that what we mentioned is the two sides of the same coin. For example, in this case, that we farmers are there. We are talking about a habit change of the farmers, but to change this, we must to do some initial investment. We will get the benefit after, in the long run, maybe. But for the farmers, they need the money right away, every day. So we need some kind of support. For example, if the importer in Europe accept a little bit higher price, so that we can invest more for the farmers, and then if we can prove it successful at a small scale, we can prove it in the larger scales, and then thanks to the larger scale, the benefit of our optimizing fertilization or irrigations will be realized. And at a time, when the farmer can realize the benefit, they will receive. Then many more farmers will follow, and then habits will be changed. That's what I think. And regarding the local challenges and local solution, I think actually is integrated, it's interdependent. There is no one solution, umbrella solution that you can use globally, apply globally. But actually, I think that for example, in the case of Mr. Bas Bruning, one successful case will have a list of elements. So if we can have a database, for example, in Vietnam, some area in Mekong Delta, there is the same problem. Is it possible for us to create a database, and when each element of the same problem arrays, something will list out in the database, the elements contribute, match up the problem, then we will take the solution applied in Bangladesh, applied in Vietnam. So I think, I think
makes me think of doctors with a medical Bible. Yeah, you look up at the disease and then you find the technology that we should apply. But thank you very, very much. I see that Rasoul wanted to react to this.
Yeah, just very, very, very brief comment. I think one of the lack or gap is the knowledge sharing. I mean, why we pilots remain pilot, because we cannot replicate the solution that works from Bangladesh to Kenya, Uganda, because each time you have to start from scratch. So we really seeing the place that we should have a platform to knowledge share and the best practice knowledge sharing, and also the role and responsibility. I mean, those countries we are talking, especially developing countries, they are heavily subsidized by the donors. Donor has a huge power, and this power should be used to influence the policy framework in the country. Private sector, we take risk. I mean, Herman is here. We are from private sector. Bas is also private sector. We put our hand on the fire. We will take the risk to scale the solutions. But if the policy framework is not in place in certain countries, regardless how much we want, then we can't. So especially donor government like Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, they have a power. UN, I mean, they have to play their role.
Can you give an example of what you mean? I mean, where does it? I mean, where things get stuck, Herman? Yeah.
Well, I think relating to that, the smallholders, they don't have they are surviving day by day, so they don't have the time to reflect and to stand up and make the change, and they probably also lack the knowledge and capacity. So I think that the role of the bigger companies, as Vinh also mentioned, is I think quite important. They can make the change.
What kind of change? What are you
in
talking
new
about?
system, in new technologies?
Are they forbidden now by the government, or where does it get stuck?
It goes hand in hand with the government, but
Yeah.
they can make the change to more circular systems, and share the knowledge with the smallholders. So also the smallholders in the vicinity of the bigger companies can benefit from the new technology, from new seeds, from the supply chain, from the value chain.
Yeah.
We have a big donor here, or representing a big donor, Jelle. I think you heard this.
They're a bank.
They're a bank. Yeah, but they also work a lot with governments, because you asked that question, right? So Jelle, please, could you? It would be interesting if to hear from you on the side of the Asian Development Bank, if how you look at this, and if you're playing a role in making these changes and doing some lobby, maybe with the government. I see Jelle is on mute, so if you're talking, we can't hear you. But it could be that you're getting coffee. Okay.
No. Sorry for that. I would love a cup of coffee, though. I think there is certainly a tendency to work more and more across different levels of governance. I mean, there is very much a tendency, sometimes maybe too much, to decentralize certain aspects. But yeah, we do actually discuss and exchange with government continuously, and there is certainly a role we can play. But in the end, of course, it's always the government who finally decides what kind of procedures we use. I mean, obviously, and particularly for us, we're giving loans generally. There's sometimes, so it needs to be something that is part of the government strategy, of the government plans, to be able to take a loan and to have confidence in being able to get economic returns, so to pay back in the long term. Yeah, and of course also all the strategies that we develop are always discussed with our what we call developing member countries. First of all, through our local offices. We have offices in practically every of the countries. Informally with governments, and later on a more formal level, and then anchored in a country partnership strategy. But if you read those, if you see those, there's more and more of an integration across different levels and across different pillars. And there's a lot of attention to capacity building, and we're considering ourselves also changing a little bit from a development bank to a knowledge and development bank, to also add these kind of elements in there. That depends a bit on which level of the countries have in terms of development. So this becomes more and more obviously if the country is a bit further developed, because it can sort of function as an example, and also the needs, the immediate needs of for example, poverty reduction, or other very important issues like emergency help are a bit less there.
Yeah. Jelle, and because this links also immediately to a question which we got from Rieke, and she says, how do you see the role of education institutions, universities, polytechnics, TVET, that's vocational training, in upscaling knowledge and skills transfer? How do you see that role?
Well, we have an Asian Development Bank Institute, which is like a knowledge institute and university. We have also partnerships with many different knowledge institutes in country as well as internationally, and I think this is a very important role, and we do many of the projects together with some of these institutes, CGIAR, but also locally. And vocational training becomes more and more something that we look into in, say, these sort of integrated approaches. In our governance, we have as one of our operational priority is about governance, improving governance, and obviously vocational training is an important part there where it comes to, let's say, the end users and the beneficiaries. So it's something that is developing, and I think these things are aligning very much with what we were discussing today.
Yeah. And then you sound very positive, eh? And I know that, let's say the things are going in the right direction. I know from the private sector point of view, it's always too slow. So yeah, I know that's the case. I'm looking at also Bas. Bas, do you want to add anything to what we discussed on the role of the government, educational institutes, other observations on this?
Well, I don't know. Okay, this I've heard that it is adopting things with the project in Bangladesh that I mentioned. There we did see that it was very much adopted also outside of the project. And I also mentioned that I was happy that it's still continuing today, which is true, but it also didn't go so easy. So I mentioned that for me, it's always a bit sad when the project ends and we all leave and pack our bags and never come back. So I very much agree that this is this is the discussion. Why, we've shown that things work. Us and Vinh story, and well, many stories, Rasoul knows many stories. Stuff works, so we need to. I'm also often wondering why doesn't it go further? I got that question, and I started talking about local governments. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not the best one to answer that. I don't really know. I don't understand it. You show it, it works, and we know that there's these millions of people in the same type of trouble. So yeah, maybe yeah. Yeah, banks, local governments.
Bas, thank you a lot. And at the same time, I'm also thinking the title of this session is Global Challenges, Local Solutions. And I wished we could have kind of an exclamation mark there, because we have the local solutions. But then the next sentence is, and then what? Question mark, right? And it gets to scaling. It gets to changes or adaptation in the country, the governments who have to pick up things. I mean, setting examples seems to be really important. I also look at the clock, and we're not going to solve this now. So we will end with a bit of a question mark. We have these global challenges. We have the local solutions. I hear you say that. I hear you say that. You put it in reports. You put it in practice. We have heard about the examples which are put in practice. And then what? How do we move to scale and to basically business solutions, right? So you can step in. Well, maybe that's a topic we can explore another time. I have to really wrap up for now. I want to thank Vinh, Bas, Jelle for their contributions. And I want to thank a lot Herman and Rasoul here. I also have to say, give credits to Netherlands Water Partnership and Partners for Water for initiating this, and of course for Simone for doing all this, and Miriam and Sandra. I would like to thank you. I hear the bell. Oh, that's me. Sorry, I thought I finished everything, but no, it's my own bell. Thank you, participants. And there is one more session, I think, this afternoon, also organized by Netherlands Water Partnership. Thanks a lot, and I hope you get inspired a little bit, and I hope next time we can talk about scaling and give examples of that.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for the chairman.
Thank you. You moderated well.